Good morning. I'm Paul Healy, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Principals Association. I'm here with Eric Eschball, our Assistant Executive Director, bringing you another webinar on updates from PDE in reference to COVID-19. So Eric, we have a couple new things to talk about today on this recorded webinar. But before we do that, we'd like to acknowledge that we could not do our work without our corporate sponsors. And so each time we're going to feature a new corporate sponsor. And today we're featuring Horace Mann. So you want to tell us a little bit about Horace Mann and what they do?
Absolutely. Horace Mann companies have been a long time diamond level sponsor of the Pennsylvania Principals Association. And they also sponsor our aspiring principal scholarships. And they're on a mission to help you, our members, and their staff achieve financial success. So you can stay in the profession that you love, even throughout the pandemic and beyond. Horace Mann is giving all educators complimentary access to its student loan solution suite of student loan management resources in appreciation for all that you do and have done and are doing during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is really important information for those of you who have student loans or maybe in the process of getting some student loans for your family. So to access this information, please reach out to a good friend of ours, Steve Delisle. He can be reached at steve.delisle, D-E-L-I-S-L-E, at horacemann.com. We're also going to put a link to that on our website under news and announcements. And we appreciate Horace Mann for their sponsorship and all that they've done for the Pennsylvania Principals Association.
Yeah, they've been a longtime sponsor of the Pennsylvania Principals Association. We have a great relationship with Horace Mann and especially Steve Delisle. Really, I'm proud to call him my friend after 7 years as well. So always like getting together with Steve. So shout out to Steve and everything that they do. Please check their website for other things that they do for schools with the Donors Choose program and a number of other things that they give back to schools. And this was a company actually found by educators, you know, in the insurance business years and years ago. So again, Horace Mann, check them out. So today, Eric, there's a couple new things that came out that we want to talk about, some new guidance. A couple new tools. One is rapid response that I'll talk about, and I think you're going to hit transportation.
Fire and emergency drills. And athletics. One of our favorite topics that just keeps coming around and keeps having some changes.
So let's start with rapid response. So we got word just last week that PDE had partnered with the Pennsylvania Department of Health and PEMA, the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, to actually provide a dedicated hotline for school districts for COVID-19. The way it was prior to this going live, I believe Monday, it went live Monday, was that if you had a suspected case or a case of COVID-19, you could call the Department of Health personally yourself to get information. The problem with that, Eric, was that so is everybody else calling Department of Health, and there wasn't something dedicated. You can still do that, by the way. It's not mandated that you use this new system, but it's going to be a lot easier for you, we believe, to go through this system. So here's how it works.
Long wait times when you're calling the Department of Health, kind of similar to calling your cable company.
Correct. Yeah. You'll be on hold for the next 45 minutes, one of those types of things. So this new system is basically called Rapid Response, and it's a hotline exclusively set up for districts to use. And it operates through your local IU. Now, we do know that there are several counties, 5 or 6 counties, that have their own county Department of Health. And you should still use that if you have your own county system. But for the rest of us in those counties that do not have a dedicated county Department of Health, this would be the avenue to use to get more up-to-date and quicker response time. So the way it works, it's a 24/7 hotline that school districts would use, and someone at the IU will take that call and then notify the health department on your behalf if it's a case that they need to report. If it's just information, they'll help you with that information, get that information back to you. They'll be the conduit for that. But once, if you have a case or suspect a case and you need support, they'll notify the Department of Health, and then they'll contact you. This all goes through, by the way, the superintendent of schools, because they're the ones that got the number to go to the IU. It's not widespread because they don't want it out there. So you would have to work through the
Yeah,
superintendent.
and then the IUs have that hotline
Correct.
to the Department of Health, so that there's supposedly only 29 people calling, because there's 29 IUs, only 29 people calling into the Department of Health for that rapid response. And
Right.
the turnaround is supposed to be much quicker.
And that's how they'll protect the number from getting out into the public. And so you might be wondering, well, what do we call about? So here's a couple things. If you have some issues related to these things, identification and support in determining next steps once you find out you have a student or a staff member who tested positive or multiple positive cases in the building. Remember, the Department of Health is supposed to provide guidance to schools once there is a COVID case as well. So that's what this hotline is for. Another issue could be, what do you do if you have a potential COVID-19 exposure to staff or student? So one is confirmed case, one is potential, or you suspect that. What should you do? And then finally, determining when and how you should close down the building for deep cleaning. They'll provide guidance for that as well. So again, make sure if you haven't heard about this in your administrative team meeting, you might want to check with your superintendent and say, because that may change your protocols in your district. It used to be that anybody could call the Department of Health, and you could still do that, but this may be a quicker response time.
And we know in our area as well as around the state that it's not taking long for positive cases to start appearing in school district. They're suspected positive
Right.
cases. So this is important to stay on top of.
Yeah, and if you've been following the news, even with the colleges and things going on, I think in our area, Gettysburg College, just quarantining in place now because of cases. So again, we know it's going to happen, but here's a great way and a resource for school districts.
Right.
All right, so let's hit some new guidance on fire drills.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's going to impact each of you as building principals is when do I run fire drills? When do I run those school security drills? And what about bus evacuation drills? Something that is written into legislation and written into the school code is to something that you have to do on a monthly basis. So let's talk about fire drills. If you're totally remote, don't worry about fire drills. Parents and families should be running those on their own. But as long as you're remote, you're not required to meet the guidelines set forth in the school code for monthly fire drills. If you provide 7 or more days of in-person instruction in any month.
And this is new.
Yes, this is new. So 7 or more days of in-person instruction in any month, then the drill is required.
And for any amount of students as well. So it doesn't have to
Right.
be the total population. If you're doing a hybrid A-B schedule,
Yes,
bring in any students on campus,
that's right.
bam, you're under that
Yeah,
guideline.
exactly. So for those of you who are in the hybrid model, and for those of you who are in the full face-to-face model, you're pretty much going to have to do a monthly fire drill.
So what's interesting about this, when you check the school code on this, and this was a problem, actually, we had a case in reference to this probably about 2 years ago, Eric. The public school code actually says that you will do a fire drill each month,
Yeah.
which means in the summertime
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
And there was a principal that wasn't doing that and actually was called on to do that, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
we said the next time the superintendent walks in your building in the summertime, pull the fire drill, right? But again, make sure you know that new guideline now. If you're totally remote, no fire drill, at least 7 days, back in.
Yep. So that brings up something that's just become more prevalent in the last few years, and that's the school security drills. And if you recall, you can replace a school security drill for fire drill, but know that under COVID-19, you are still required within the first 90 days of in-person instruction, no matter when that in-person instruction begins, to have a school security drill.
Right.
So again, if you're remote all year, you don't have to have one. But within the first 90 days of any kind of in-person instruction, you must have a school security drill.
And then probably the final one that we always do, we did that as superintendents and principals, is those bus evacuation drills. What about those?
Yeah, don't you love the bus evacuation
Yes.
drills?
Everybody out the back, right?
Everybody out the back. If you're busing any students, then the drills are required. So you're not getting any kind of reprieve from that. We assume that most school districts are going to be busing students if they're having any kind of in-person instruction. Obviously, again, if you're remote and not busing students, you don't have to worry about it. But put that on your tickler file to do. I think those are twice a year.
Getting in towards the end, spring, right?
Make sure that you're doing those as well.
So since we're talking about transportation now,
yes,
that has been a big, huge issue across the state right now, and what's happening with transportation with public school students and non-public students. So what's the new stuff on that?
Yeah, so the question was, or the issue was, if I'm not transporting my
own students,
do I have to transport those who don't go to my school, such as brick and mortar charter school students or private school students? And there was a lot of pushback on that. Just know that with the brick and mortar charter school students, they're still public school students, and transportation is required for those charter school students that attend a brick and mortar school.
No matter whether you're bringing your own kids in or not,
No
if the other brick and mortar charter school is going to do face-to-face and you're totally remote, you still have a responsibility then to transport them. Is that correct then?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and those reimbursement guidelines that come into play are in effect for that. Now, then you switch to your non-public students, your private school students.
And this is the debate issue.
And
right?
This is the big hot topic. And basically what code says is that you are required to provide transportation for non-public school students when you are providing transportation for public school students. So some school districts have looked at that and said, well, we're not bringing our own kids in, so we're not going to provide transportation for private school students. Right now, that seems to be legit. However, there is legislation that is gaining speed rather rapidly, and from both parties saying, yeah, that can't happen. And this is, this is a situation where we're creating divides where maybe divides don't need to be created. And so we think that you're going to see legislation in the near future that says no matter what, you're going to have to provide to both the charter schools and the private schools.
Yeah. And we think that legislation will be limited to this school year,
yes.
correct? Now,
yes.
It wouldn't be all the time. It's because of the unique situations of COVID-19. We think that legislation may get out of the House and to the Senate, and we don't know what the governor would do about that. But there's enough pressure and enough appetite right now to help the non-publics in some way, and this could be it.
Sure. Yeah. And again, it seems to, that's one thing that seems to be going beyond party lines.
And it's hard to argue against that, except to the point as an organization that we would say, if it's not safe to transport our own students,
right.
Why is it safe to transport non-pub students?
Well, and think about the social distancing
right.
that is required on buses, or at least the face coverings that are required. Right. If we don't think it's safe for our students, but we have to do it for others, and then who is responsible for the cost of providing for a safe environment on the school bus? And what about your bus contractors?
And the liability issues, because you're transporting the students. So we are certainly in line with the other ed organizations about pointing out some of those things. And again, if you have a local legislator, you might want to point that out as well if this is an issue in your community right now, because I think it's those talks have been different around the state depending on the non-pubs and stuff.
They certainly have.
And some districts have already worked this out.
Yes.
But so we're hoping that maybe we're not going to have legislation if districts work it out themselves.
Correct.
Okay. And the last thing I guess we'll mention is that, we keep getting new guidance from PDE on the FAQs. And sometimes it's hard to find those, sometimes they put a little red star there. So what they've created now, if you go to the PD website and hit the COVID-19 and you go to pre-K to 12 schools, they have now over on the right-hand side, what's new. So every week, instead of trying to search through everything, they'll have the what's new FAQs, plus the new transmission by county that we've been seeing. And I think we're in about our 4th or 5th week of that, if you look at that. And again, if you haven't been paying attention to that, it's really interesting to look to see. The most recent one is on the left, and you have about 4 weeks of data now to see whether you're in the low, moderate, or what's the other one, substantial, I guess, levels at this point.
So the last topic then would be about athletics, right?
Yes.
So two big things came up just yesterday, September 2nd, in regards to athletics. First, we've been talking to you on this webinar about House Bill 2787 that has been now approved, just yesterday, approved by the House on a 155-47 vote, which means about half of the Democrats in the House also voted for this. It now goes to the Senate Education Committee, and that's the bill that amends the public school code, basically saying it's the school district's sole purview to make decisions on athletics.
Which it is now, anyhow. Right?
Well, it is, but
yeah.
I thought that this was a good quote that Representative Reese, who has sponsored this bill, told House committee members. He said, House Bill 2787 is an attempt to provide clarity to school officials by making certain that the decision to conduct school activities is indeed their own. He said, while Governor Wolf has said in a statement that this is a recommendation, the fear is that that recommendation could very well become an order or a mandate. And his comment is such a policy would be a one-size-fits-all approach, which we believe in this case would not be the most appropriate course of action. So they have that, school districts have that ability right now. He just wants to make sure that the governor doesn't take that away from
So the authority hasn't changed. It's just in writing to really memorialize that authority.
Exactly.
Okay.
We think that the Senate Education Committee will probably move rather quickly on this. It'll go to the full Senate for a vote. Interesting to see whether what happens when it gets to the governor's desk.
Yeah.
That should be an interesting one. The other thing that just came out yesterday was updated information from the governor's office on who can attend sporting events.
Yeah.
Right? What spectators can attend.
And you'll find that on the PD website as well under the guidance.
Yeah. And really what it says now is that parents, spectators can attend as long as they adhere to the guidelines that no more than 250 people can be at an event if it's outside, and no more than 25 people can be in an event if it's inside, and that includes all the players, all the officials, all the coaches. So just having a conversation with one of our office staff members, we were talking about girls volleyball in the fall. Now, if you can only have 25 people in a gym for girls volleyball, think about who can attend. There probably won't be any spectators when you talk about the teams, the coaches, the officials. So
true.
The thing that has changed in the guidance on the PDE website from September or from August 6th, when they originally put that out, to September 2nd, is that they've taken out a statement that that it's limited to student athletes, coaches, officials, and staff only, and they've taken out the prohibition of visitors and spectators.
So, but the one thing that still hasn't changed, right, Eric, is even though they're providing this guidance, if a district decides to have fall sports, the recommendation still from the governor and the Department of Health is that no fall sports until January 1st, 2021. That has not changed. That's the recommendation. But again, remember, that's not a mandate, right?
Correct. And that has not changed. And in fact, he's added to that.
Yeah.
He has actually said that similar to school sports, the administration strongly recommends that youth recreational sports be postponed as well, which has always been some of PIAA's concern, that if we cancel school sports, the travel teams and the youth sports will have it anyways, and maybe in an unsafe environment. The governor's recommendation is that they should cancel as well. I don't think you'll see much change
Right.
in that. And it remains a recommendation, not a mandate, and a recommendation that I don't think very many
Yeah.
people will follow.
And again, this is a debate that's playing itself across the state as well, from district to district, right? And from
Absolutely.
community to community.
And we know that amongst our membership, there are differences of
Yeah.
opinion on this. And, the results of our survey on this topic were very split.
Yeah.
And we understand that. We understand that our state is a very diverse state and has a diversity of opinions, but also just the way that the pandemic has impacted the communities is very different from community to community. So we understand that there's going to be this the difference of opinions, and that's okay. We want to provide you with information based on the facts, not just our opinions.
Right. And I guess, when we talk about that survey, it was enough people, 44, 45%, that really had some issues with fall sports. And even though that was in the slight minority, right, it still pointed out, and I guess that's what President Mike Allison was trying to do in his letter to PIAA and other people as well, to point out that's enough of a population that says, hey, we have some angst about this issue, right? And trying to point that out.
Sure. And I guess my last thought on that is there are always going to be those situations in our job where we don't agree on some things. Have some great conversations about it. Have good debate, and go from there. Make your decision based on facts.
Right. So hopefully you got some good information from today's webinar. Eric and I both want to wish you a very good Labor Day holiday season. We know that a lot of schools are starting after Labor Day as well. Some have started already, so we're monitoring those cases across district to district. So again, thank you for joining us. And again, a great shout out to our sponsor for today's webinar, Horace Mann. You can check our website for a link to Horace Mann and to Steve Delisle. So thank you, and have a great day and a great week.
Be well.